Okay, guys, it's time to dig back in. Today's unofficial sponsor is Life is Good, a brand that we've gotten some things from in the past. I'm glad I tried this on before I started the video because I think my daughter stole it from me at some point because I tried to put this on and it pretty much just stopped there. It was very, very small. So slight adjustments. We're up and running with our unofficial sponsor, and we are back to James chapter 4 as we're going to finish things up today, starting out in verse 13. That's a very whopper jawed. That's okay. Starting out at verse 13, it says this. And again, I hope you have your journal and some pen and maybe see what the Holy Spirit has for you today as we continue to dive in. But starting out in verse 13, it says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him or her it's a sin." I remember when I first read this, I was a lot younger, and I almost kind of felt guilty for ever making plans. It was like, is it wrong to have a 401k? Is it wrong to say, tomorrow we're going to go to a birthday party? And I think that's really kind of taking things into kind of an extreme way of understanding this versus the heart of what James is trying to say to us. He basically says the arrogance we have is that we plan things and we actually think we have control over things. We actually feel like that we have a way that if we do A, B, and C, then we can control what D looks like. And we've talked about this a little bit with retirement and finances and things that God has given us to steward that we try to embrace and keep hold of, which is really kind of a folly type opportunity. And he says, we really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in an hour. We don't know who we're going to lose. We don't know if a stock market's going to crash and change everything in the economy across our country. We don't know if someone that we've put a lot of faith into is going to turn their back on us. We've experienced these things in our lives, but yet we continue to go back and do things, trying to control things. And he's saying that we got to remember that life is a vapor, and it's not something that we have control over, and it can change in a heartbeat. At the time of this recording, and maybe some of you guys will remember because this will be about a month ago by the time you see this, I had lost two friends of mine at one of my nursing homes. Estelle was the name of one of my buddies. I knew her for probably about 7 years. And then a buddy of mine by the name of Lester, who I've known for about 4 or 5 years. And both had declined, and both were in hospice. It wasn't overly surprising, but I think one of the things that really stood out to me was just how quick that instant comes. I've experienced it many times with people in the ministry that God's called me to, but it never fails to just really capture my attention, just how quick that moment is. In Lester's case, I went into his room and spent some time, just a couple of moments before Bible study, with his daughter-in-law and one of the nurses, and talked to them a little bit, and was able to pray over Lester. And this was probably about 3 to 11, and Bible study was getting ready to start, and I asked him if it's okay if I came back after Bible study and just kind of checked on them, see if they needed anything, and they said yeah. And I came back at 11:30, and two nurses stand out the door. They're like, "Lester's gone." And going into the room was kind of intimidating, not because I haven't done it a billion times over, but this is family with a loved one who's now gone, saying the final goodbyes. And you want to be there as a resource if they need it, but you also want to stay out of the way because that's a very holy time. It's a very precious time for them. And it was just amazing just how quick things go. And we forget that. I think we make ourselves feel more comfortable by ignoring that aspect or that part of life, or just how quickly things change. But I think we do ourselves some service, not getting locked up in anxiety and stress about it, but by saying the only one who controls all this is God, and I think I'm going to give it to him. And so I think what James is talking about here is just we need to stop thinking we're so in control and lean into God. You are a mist. You appear for a little while and then you're gone. And it might seem like we've got forever on this planet, but if you can think of a multitude of people probably sitting here right now, grandparents, parents, friends who have already passed on, and it just seems like you had such a short amount of time with them. Or it seems like it came up so sudden. We are wise to count our days. We're wise to know who's in control. He says we would be better if we said, if it's the Lord's will, we'll do this. We'll live. We'll go over here and do that. If God wills it. Just so we're constantly reminding ourselves of just how much folly it is thinking that we're in control of anything here. And just lean into Him. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. And boasting is evil. So whatever you know is the right thing to do and fails to do, for him it is sin. Now, what does that last sentence mean? Because it seems to be kind of thrown in that doesn't necessarily fit, but it's in the same paragraph, and we know our English rules. That means it's the same topic. And I think what he's trying to say is a lot of times we feel God tell us to reach out to someone, help somebody, maybe sacrifice some finances for God's ministry or to be generous to somebody else, to take and start a new ministry or to start reaching out to a neighbor within your neighborhood. And we think, well, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that next week. I'll just put that off for a little bit of time. And we need to stop doing that. It says if you know what the right thing to do is and you're pushing it off, you're sinning. And you might say, well, there's just nothing in the Bible that takes and says I need to go talk to this guy right now before 7 p.m. tonight and before dinner time or this and that. Looking for the law, looking for some kind of letter to justify yourself. If the Holy Spirit puts on your heart and you know it's what you ought to do, get to it. If you don't, it's a sin. If you don't, it might be a missed opportunity. You don't know if you're taking your last breath today. You don't know if that guy or that neighbor is taking the last breath that day. Dig in, follow the Spirit, follow those promptings, and see what God has for you. Tomorrow's not promised to you and me, but right now is. And we can see some mighty movements of God, even through us, as we lean into Him. So thanks, guys. I'll talk to you guys at our next bedhead. Thanks. Be blessed.